Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Learning Podcast. I'm Jason, your host, and today we have an exciting and very important topic for all English learners. Stop thinking, start talking. And of course, I'm joined by my amazing co-host, Julia. How are you today, Julia?
Hi, Jason. I'm doing great, and I'm really excited about today's episode. This is a topic that so many English learners struggle with, overthinking before they speak. Instead of just talking, they keep worrying about grammar, pronunciation, or whether they're saying things correctly, and that stops them from improving.
Exactly. I hear this all the time. What if I make a mistake? What if people don't understand me? What if I sound silly? And because of this fear, many learners hesitate to speak English at all. But here's the truth. If you want to be fluent, you have to stop thinking too much and just start speaking.
That's right. The more you speak, the better you get. But how can you stop overthinking? How can you train yourself to speak more naturally? That's exactly what we'll be talking about today.
Yes! So, if you're someone who always hesitates before speaking English, stay with us until the end, because we'll be sharing some powerful tips, exercises, and mindset shifts that will help you speak English confidently without overthinking. Let's get started. So, before we get into solutions, let's first talk about the problem. Why do so many English learners overthink before speaking? What's stopping them from just talking naturally?
That's a great question, Jason. I think one of the biggest reasons is the fear of making mistakes. Many learners think, what if I say something wrong? Or what if people laugh at me? This fear makes them stay silent instead of trying to speak.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, native speakers make mistakes all the time. They mispronounce words. They forget grammar rules. They even make sentences that don't make perfect sense. But they keep talking. The difference is they don't overthink it.
Right. But English learners often feel pressure to speak perfectly, so they pause, they correct themselves too much, and in the end, they don't say anything at all. And that's a big problem because the only way to improve is to practice speaking.
That's true. Another reason why learners overthink is translating from their native language. Instead of forming sentences naturally in English, they try to think in their own language first, then translate it word by word. And of course, that takes time, so by the time they're ready to speak, the conversation has already moved on.
Yes, and that makes them feel frustrated, so they stop trying. Another common problem is lack of confidence. Some learners feel like their accent isn't good enough, or they don't have a big vocabulary, so they just stay quiet.
And that silence actually makes the problem worse. The less you speak, the more nervous you feel about speaking. It becomes a cycle of overthinking and avoiding English conversations.
Exactly. But the good news is you don't need to be perfect to speak English fluently. You just need to be confident and keep talking. And that's what we're going to help you with today.
Yes! Now that we understand the problem, let's talk about the solution. Why speaking without thinking too much is the key to fluency. All right, now that we understand why learners overthink, let's talk about the solution. Why speaking without thinking too much is the key to fluency. Julia, why is it so important for learners to stop overanalyzing and just start speaking?
Great question, Jason. The main reason is that fluency comes from practice, not perfection. The more you speak, the faster your brain gets at forming sentences naturally. If you always stop to think about grammar and vocabulary before you speak, you'll never develop the speed and confidence you need.
That's so true. Think about how babies learn to talk. They don't study grammar first, right? They just listen, repeat, and keep talking, even if they make mistakes. And over time, their speech improves naturally.
Exactly. And adults can learn the same way. Instead of waiting until your English is perfect, you should speak as much as possible even if you make mistakes. That's how real fluency develops.
Yes, I always tell learners, speak first, fix later. If you focus too much on correctness while speaking, it slows you down. But if you just talk and worry about small mistakes later, you'll sound much more natural.
That's a great tip. And another thing, native speakers don't care about small mistakes. If you communicate clearly, they will understand you. Nobody is judging you as much as you think.
Exactly. And actually, the more relaxed and natural you are when speaking, the more confident you sound. Confidence makes people listen to you more than perfect grammar does.
That's so true. And let's be honest, even native speakers make grammar mistakes, but they keep going. So learners should do the same. The more you practice speaking without stopping, the faster you'll improve.
Yes. So, now that we understand why thinking less and talking more is the key, let's move on to something even more exciting. Practical tips to help you stop overthinking and start speaking confidently. Now comes the most exciting part of today's episode. Practical tips to help you stop overthinking and start speaking. Julia, let's start with the first tip. What's one powerful way to stop hesitating and just talk?
One of the best ways is to think in English instead of translating from your native language. If you always translate in your head before speaking, it slows you down. But if you train your brain to think in English, words will come out faster and more naturally.
That's a fantastic tip. And a simple way to practice thinking in English is to describe your day in English. For example, if you're making coffee in the morning, say in your head, I am making coffee. The water is boiling. I am pouring it into my cup. It's a great way to make English a natural part of your daily thoughts.
Exactly. And here's another tip. Speak without worrying about grammar. Of course, grammar is important, but when you're having a conversation, communication is more important than correctness. Even if you make a mistake, people will still understand you.
That's so true. If you focus too much on grammar while speaking, you will pause a lot, and that makes you feel less confident. But if you just keep talking, your brain will naturally correct itself over time.
Right. And speaking of confidence, another great tip is to practice with yourself. Many learners say, I don't have a partner to practice with. But guess what? You can talk to yourself. Stand in front of a mirror and have a conversation, or describe what you see around you. This will help you get comfortable speaking out loud.
I love that. And here's another great technique. Use shadowing. This means listening to a native speaker and immediately repeating what they say, copying their pronunciation, rhythm, and speed. It's one of the fastest ways to sound more natural in English.
Yes, and you don't even need a teacher for this. Just find a YouTube video, a podcast, or even a movie and repeat after the speaker. This helps you stop thinking too much and just get used to speaking naturally.
That's a fantastic method. And here's another practical tip. Use simple sentences. Many learners hesitate because they try to make long, complicated sentences. But it's okay to use short, simple sentences. For example, instead of saying, I would like to discuss an important matter with you, just say, let's talk about something important. Simple is always better.
Absolutely. The goal is to keep the conversation going, not to sound perfect. And speaking of keeping the conversation going, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake is part of the learning process. If you're too scared to make mistakes, you won't speak at all, and that's the biggest mistake of all.
Exactly. Mistakes are proof that you're learning. And that brings me to another tip. Immerse yourself in English every day. The more you listen to English, the easier it becomes to speak without thinking. So, listen to English podcasts, watch movies, and surround yourself with the language as much as possible.
Yes, the more English you hear, the more your brain absorbs natural speech patterns. And one final tip, set a speaking challenge for yourself. For example, challenge yourself to speak English for 5 minutes every day without stopping. Even if you don't know a word, just keep talking and find another way to express your idea.
I love that. The more you push yourself to speak, the more confident you become. So, let's quickly summarize these tips. Think in English. Don't worry about grammar. Practice with yourself. Use shadowing. Keep sentences simple. Embrace mistakes. Immerse yourself in English. And set a speaking challenge.
Exactly. If you follow these tips, you'll start speaking English naturally without overthinking. And now, let's wrap up with some final encouragement for our listeners.
All right. Now it's time for a fun and practical exercise. We want to challenge our listeners with a spontaneous speaking challenge. Julia, are you ready?
Absolutely. This is a great way to help learners stop overthinking and start talking. So, how does this challenge work, Jason?
Here's how it works. We'll give you a topic, and you have to speak about it for 30 seconds without stopping. No long pauses, no overthinking. Just keep talking. If you don't know a word, describe it in another way. The goal is to keep the conversation going.
That's right. And Jason, I think we should show an example first so our listeners can see how it's done. Let's do a quick role play.
Great idea. Okay, Julia, your topic is describe your morning routine. Go.
Okay. Every morning I wake up at 7 a.m. First, I stretch and drink a glass of water. Then I brush my teeth and take a shower. After that, I make a cup of coffee and eat breakfast, usually eggs and toast. I check my phone for messages and then get dressed. Finally, I prepare for my work or study. That's my morning routine.
Awesome. That was smooth and natural. You didn't stop, and even though it wasn't perfect, it was clear and confident. That's the goal.
Exactly. Now, Jason, your turn. Your topic is your favorite hobby. Go.
All right. My favorite hobby is playing the guitar. I love music, and playing the guitar helps me relax. I usually practice in the evening after work. I like learning new songs, and sometimes I play for my friends. Music makes me feel happy, and I enjoy improving my skills every day.
Perfect. You didn't stop and you kept going, even if you had to think of the next sentence. That's what we want our listeners to do.
Yes. Now, it's your turn, listeners. Here's your challenge. We'll give you 3 topics, and you must choose one and speak for 30 seconds without stopping.
Here are your topics. 1. Describe your favorite food. 2. Talk about your daily routine. 3. Describe a place you want to visit.
Pick one and start speaking. Don't stop. Don't overthink. Just talk. If you don't know a word, describe it in another way. Ready? Go.
Great job! Even if you struggled a little, that's okay. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Just remember, the goal is to speak, not to be perfect.
Exactly. So, keep practicing this challenge every day. You'll be amazed at how fast your confidence improves. Now, let's wrap up with some final encouragement. We've talked about practical techniques, but there's something even more important: your mindset. If you don't believe in yourself, no amount of practice will help. So, Julia, how can learners shift their mindset to become more confident speakers?
That's a great question, Jason. The first thing to remember is this: confidence comes from action, not from waiting to feel ready. Many learners think, I'll speak when I feel confident. But the truth is, you feel confident after you speak, not before. So start talking now.
Absolutely. And another mindset shift is to stop aiming for perfection. A lot of learners hesitate because they don't want to make mistakes. But here's a secret. Even native speakers make mistakes. So, instead of thinking, I must be perfect, think, I must communicate.
Exactly. Communication is the goal, not perfection. And speaking of mistakes, change the way you see them. Instead of feeling embarrassed, see mistakes as proof that you are learning. If you never make mistakes, it means you're not pushing yourself enough.
I love that. And here's another mindset shift. Stop comparing yourself to others. Many learners say, my friend speaks better than me, or I'll never sound like a native speaker. But the only person you should compare yourself to is your past self. Are you better than you were yesterday? If yes, you're winning.
That's such an important point. And I'll add one more. Embrace discomfort. Speaking a new language feels uncomfortable at first, but that's normal. Confidence grows when you step out of your comfort zone. So instead of avoiding English conversations, jump into them.
Absolutely. So let's summarize these mindset shifts. 1. Confidence comes from action. Speak now, not later. 2. Forget perfection. Focus on communication. 3. Mistakes are proof that you're learning, not failing. 4. Compare yourself only to your past self. 5. Embrace discomfort. Growth happens outside your comfort zone.
Yes, if you change your mindset, speaking English will feel much easier. Now, let's move to our final conclusion and wrap up today's episode.
Before we end today's episode, we want to leave you with some encouragement. Learning English is a journey, and sometimes it can feel frustrating. But remember this, every time you speak, you are improving. Even if you make mistakes, even if you don't sound perfect, you are growing.
Yes, and the most important thing is to keep going. Don't wait for the perfect moment to start speaking. The perfect moment is right now. If you keep waiting, you'll stay in the same place. But if you speak today, even just a little, you'll be further ahead tomorrow.
Exactly. And don't let fear stop you. Many learners think, what if people laugh at me? Or, what if I say something wrong? But here's the truth. Most people admire you for trying. They respect your effort. No one is judging you as much as you think.
That's such a good point. And I want to say this to our listeners. You are capable. You are smart enough to learn English. You are strong enough to overcome challenges. And you already have everything you need to succeed. The only thing left to do is start talking.
Yes. So, our final message to you is, believe in yourself, take action, and never stop learning. English fluency is waiting for you. Go get it.
And we are always here to help. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to practice the spontaneous speaking challenge we did earlier and keep pushing yourself every day.
That's right. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more practical tips and motivation. Thank you for joining us today, and remember, stop thinking, start talking. See you next time.
Bye, everyone. Keep practicing and stay confident.